Hey guys, InGame Bugs today bringing out a video. Today we're going over the current state of Warzone and the problems that are plaguing particularly the next-gen consoles, as well as I know PC is having some issues as well, but mainly next-gen consoles seem to be having a lot of issues right now. And given the price point for the next-gen consoles, especially what I ended up paying for mine because of the limited supply available currently, definitely some problems that need to be addressed here. Now, the one caveat here, the big issue, is that Raven Software's QA team is still on strike, and apparently, according to Tom Henderson and other insiders, are saying that there's been really no communication between upper management within Activision and the QA testers as far as meeting their demands for pay and hiring on as full-time employees, etc. So if we look at that, take that for what it is. Obviously, with this new season update here that was introduced, we did see a lot of things that were supposedly fixed that appear to not be fixed. There's also been a lot of promises made by Raven Software for the game over, I would say, the past probably year or more. And they just haven't really met all of those promises, especially with the state the game is in right now. So we'll jump into this. I'll show a different clips in the background of just some gameplay. Try and highlight some of the issues that I'm talking about here, really in no particular order. But you will see some issues that I'm talking about here in the background. Hopefully I'll edit them up so you guys can see what I'm talking about. Now, first off, I jumped on to play today, probably about a 3.5 hour session. I want to say maybe 3 hours. And playing with friends seemed to be a big challenge. So first off, I was playing with Moo, and we tried to get a trio in there with another person, and it just would not find games. So we had a really hard time finding games for about the first 20 minutes. Then we just had to end up going to duos alone because the friends list for Call of Duty's Warzone just was not updating my friends correctly, as well as in the groups. We do have the regiment, which apparently they disbanded the regiment, but players are still within the groups in Call of Duty's Warzone and Modern Warfare, but the groups weren't updating to show who was online as well as the friends list. And when you filter on the friends list, something along the lines just to show who's online, friends that are actually online are not shown online. And then when you also show offline friends as well, you can scroll down and find the friend you're looking for, and he appears online. So there's definitely a big issue, and this has always been a problem. I noticed way in the beginning when Warzone launched too, just trying to get friends to show online and get them in parties seems to be a big problem right now. And again, this just seems to be something that keeps reoccurring, so hopefully it's something that they can address. I'm sure that the game size here, throwing all this content in, is not helping. So that's one thing to keep in mind during all this, and we'll circle back to that later in the video. The other thing here, like I said, finding a game proved to be a challenge until we ended up just doing duos. So we did try and search for games with a trio once we did able to get the third person in the squad for, I would say, a good 20 minutes, and just were not able to find any games whatsoever. Not sure what was up with the servers during that point. Maybe it was just pinging too long, or taking somebody who wasn't actually the host of the party and taking the other person. We did have a person who was out of country, but still, if the host of the party is in country, we should have an easy time finding a server. But for some reason, we weren't having any luck finding servers. Now, moving on to more so gameplay mechanics as well as in-game bugs. So if we look at the in-game bugs, first off here on PlayStation 5, I ended up paying, I think, around $850 for my PlayStation 5 earlier in this, I would say early 2021, probably around April, May. I ended up getting it early summer, and the game itself, the things that we're seeing here on PS5 are texture issues as well as weapon issues. Now, I'm not sure if it's just an issue with the Vanguard weapons, but when you spawn in the first few minutes of the game, and sometimes throughout the game, picking up weapons off the ground, any ground loot, the weapon appears to be invisible, and so you don't have a crosshair. You don't really know what weapon you actually have. The weapons appear on the ground as something that they're actually not. I see a lot of L85s. I see a lot of STG-44s, and when you pick them up, they're obviously a completely different weapon. So an STG-44 could end up being like an Automatica, could end up being a Bren, could end up being anything. And so the weapons are not showing correctly. They also don't have any. They're just the textures of the guns themselves, or the blank models of the guns, so they're showing as gray, so they don't have any textures. So not only are you seeing the wrong weapon, but the Vanguard weapons are showing up on the ground with no textures added to them. They're just the gray version of the weapon, and it's the wrong weapon. So that's a big problem. Picking up weapons on the ground off right when you land, and not being able to see what weapon you actually have, not being able to see it, not being able to see your crosshairs, not being able to see when you aim down sights, makes it very difficult to get into gunfights right at the start of these games. So that's one big problem. Another big problem here on PS5 is textures loading in general for buildings and the environment. So on top of the weapons not loading, when you land again, the first 5 minutes or so, sometimes the textures in the environment are not landing. I would say this is happening probably about 90% of my games right now. And the textures, the buildings aren't loading correctly, walls aren't loading correctly, bushes aren't loading correctly. So they're showing really like a very big and obscure shapes for bushes. Buildings don't have walls, like I said, or they're just very blurry and large, taking up a portion of my screen. So there could be windows, there could be things around the building, underneath the building that you could typically see through, and you can't see through them. So on my screen, I'm seeing just like a bunch of blurry buildings and bushes that don't have any textures loaded, and I can't see the enemies that I'm trying to fight. And then on the flip side, the enemy can see exactly where I am. So I run into these situations where I would easily be getting these kills, except for the fact that I can't see where the enemy is, and he can see me. So I can down a few people, and then there's a bush that's taking up my entire screen, and a building, and something else that's all blurry, and then you can't see what you're shooting at. So this is a huge problem, especially if you're not able to buy a loadout right at the start of these games by getting money. You're stuck with these Vanguard weapons that aren't loading, and you're stuck in these textures in the environment here on the new map, which again is not loading correctly on these next-gen consoles. And again, I can only speak for PS5. I know the new Xboxes are also having similar issues, but that's a big problem. Now, another thing here that's happening on all platforms, including PC, is the freezing at buy stations. So there was one situation here where I needed to buy Moo back today, and I was just killing people left and right. I went to buy him back after killing a team, and I hit the buy station, and I saw or heard that there was a guy coming, so I tried to cancel out so I could reposition quickly, and I got frozen in the buy station for a good 20 seconds, and when you finally unfreeze, I'm dead. So this guy just gets a free kill because I freeze at the buy station. And again, this is very hard to reproduce. It just happens. It's about a 50-50 shot of this happening. It either doesn't happen, you can buy things completely fine, or you freeze for about 5 to 10 seconds, and then you have to go back and try and rebuy it, and then it will kind of freeze again, and then it'll buy what you're trying to do. So you can't really hit buy stations confidently quickly anymore to buy anyone back, and that's really a big gameplay issue right now. Trying to hit buy stations, why would you hit buy stations to try and buy someone quickly? If you're just going to freeze, try and buy loadouts, gas masks, you get stuck with the gas coming, enemies coming in. So it's very, very difficult to play around that when you don't know when it's going to happen, and there's really no reason why it should be happening or anything you can do to get around it. It just happens by chance, again, like 50-50 shot of this happening. So that's something that definitely needs to be fixed. It's a really big gameplay impact right now. Negative impact, along with the other things we just listed here. Now, the other thing here on the new map, I would say visibility is definitely an issue. Just on top, compared to the original Verdansk map, this is very dense, foresty map, which I do like. However, it is very, very difficult, especially with some of the skins, to see people on the map in the heavily wooded areas. It's very difficult to see enemies in some situations, and I find myself getting third-partied a lot. You can also third-party a lot of other teams on the flip side, but depending on where you are on the map, there's definitely low lighting, and it's very difficult to spot enemies who could be very close to you just running around. Unless you happen to hear them, it can be very difficult, especially if enemies are a little bit further in the distance. They blend in very, very easily with the environment. So I'm just thinking, compared to Verdansk, where there's more open areas, more different types of POIs. You have dense forest areas. You also have areas that are more open, downtown areas. Whereas Caldera seems to be all dense forest for the most part. There's very few areas in the towns where you can get away from the wooded areas. And when you have to move out of those towns, again, you're in wooded areas. So visibility is something that's very, very difficult, and it's very easy to third-party and get third-party because visibility is definitely an issue on this map. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is the POIs on the map. So like I said, the POIs compared to Verdansk, you had things like train station, airport, you had things like fire station up on top of the map. I forgot the POI actual name, but you had the second airport, you had mines, things like that. There's a lot of different POIs. Gulag, you had a bunch of different POIs that offered different types of gameplay at them. They offered different elevations, different types of gameplay, how you would approach engagements. And here on Caldera, a lot of the POIs seem to be very similar. Again, it's everything surrounded by dense forest. You have maybe a town here and there, and again, outside of that, it's dense forest. There's not really many high-rises or anything that's really switching up the gameplay too much compared to Verdansk. So there's definitely some areas, don't get me wrong, but I would say the POIs, there's some areas on the map, too, that I really haven't even seen fully yet. I just saw for the first time today. So there's some areas that everything just seems to be very forgettable. There's not like an airport tower. There's not like an airport roof. There's not a train station. There's not a gulag. There's not those well-defined areas that we're used to with Verdansk. And again, that could be just because it's a new map, but also I would say forgettable POIs. So I think that's definitely an issue with the map itself. Is the POIs really aren't anything that's worth writing home about. Now the next thing would be too many weapons. I would say with the Vanguard weapons now, we have Modern Warfare weapons, we have Cold War weapons, and now we have Vanguard weapons. There's way too many weapons in this game, and I think that's also adding to a lot of these issues. You have too many weapons. On top of that, too many operators, too many attachments. So the file size for Warzone in general is just too bloated right now. You have too many things that are an issue to balance. All the Vanguard weapons have 10 attachments. You also have different ammo conversions for things like 6.8mm, which apparently, looking at the Bren, it turns the Bren into like an SMG. There's no movement penalty on the Bren. 6.8mm should still be it's still a pretty heavy caliber, and for some reason it's handling and shooting like an SMG. So the Bren is, again, something they should have nerfed with the latest patch notes, I believe, the other week or so, and it still is just an animal. So it seems like, and what I saw at the time, it seems like that nerf didn't work. So that's another issue right now, is poor balance. Again, too many weapons, making it too difficult to balance. Like I remember about a year ago, Raven was going to work on raising or lowering the TTK, so it takes longer time to kill, and they were going to do that by adjusting all the weapons, and they started doing a lot of that, and then it seems like they, obviously because they had to balance the Vanguard weapons, that kind of got thrown to the wayside. And now the answer to that apparently is to increase ADS time, I'm guessing, is what they say the answer is. But you have different ways to approach this. The ultimate answer, I believe, is that there's just too many weapons. They're throwing too much into Warzone, and it's overloading it and making it just too bloated at this point. So at this point, I would really like to see, I know they have a Vanguard Royale. I would like to see a Modern Warfare Royale. I would like to see the original Verdansk come back with only Modern Warfare weapons, Modern Warfare operators, things like that, and just have that as a part of the playlist as well, or a separate download for only Modern Warfare Royale, so we can go back to the original Verdansk with the original Modern Warfare weapons at this point, because all the weapons, the new map is just a little bit too much, and I think the new map also, there's no reason we can't be playing more than one map, and the only reason that isn't the case is because there's too much content thrown in there with the weapons from 3 different games, the operators from 3 different games, the attachments, all that data from 3 different games thrown into one game client, which is on the Modern Warfare engine and the Modern Warfare client. So everything's thrown in there, and it's just making the game too large to the point where you can't even have 2 full Battle Royale maps. You obviously have Rebirth Island and you have Caldera, but there's no reason you shouldn't be able to cycle through Caldera and the original Verdansk and even Verdansk 84. So if you look at games like PUBG, they have multiple different maps. Other Battle Royales typically have more than one map, and we only have the one map for Call of Duty's Warzone. So obviously a new map, it makes sense that it's exclusive in the playlist, but again, there's really no reason we shouldn't have both maps in rotation to play. And obviously you wouldn't be able to select one or the other sometimes, but again, I think Modern Warfare Royale, where you can select it and only use Modern Warfare weapons on Verdansk, the original Verdansk, would be a really good option here, especially open up those bunkers again, things like that. And the only way to do that is to reduce the file size of the game. It would have to be almost a separate client, I feel. But let me know what you guys think down below. Those are just some of the issues I'm seeing here with Call of Duty's Warzone right now. A lot of problems going on. Let me know what you think down below, how this can be fixed, if it's going to be fixed. Until next time, this is Buffering Gaming, out. No fucking weapons here? There's a pistol on the ground. Awesome. No guns. Dope. Really good stuff.
I got a gun.